Please sit
Well,
down.
it is a love fest. We know that. That's for sure.
Nancy?
Thank you. Aloha, mahalo nui loa to everybody for coming this morning. I truly meant that when I said it is a love fest because all of the people in this room are unsung heroes, and I'm so happy that we could be here to celebrate them today. So, I'm Nancy Caraway. I have the great honor of being the First Lady of the state of Hawaii, and I also have the very proud title of Chair and Convener of the Domestic Workers Have Rights Campaign Working Group. They gave me that title, and I took it. Our partnership in the working group really formed quite organically last year, and it evolved really in a seamless interagency collaboration. And I'm going to repeat that because we hear a lot of things about bureaucracies and the government operating in its own little individual silo. So I am so happy, and I think everybody on the task force will agree, that we really did evolve in a very cooperative and collaborative interagency model of working. And before I go any further, I want to recognize the Department of Labor Public Affairs spokesperson, Bill Kuntzman.
Yay, Bill.
Because Bill actually started this whole, Kathy, welcome. Bill started I have been obviously interested in this issue internationally many, many years as a scholar, feminist scholar, and human rights activist. But when I found out that the legislature was considering this bill, I immediately called Bill numerous times, asked him endless questions, and I want to thank you, Bill, for the many tutorials that you gave me. I'm very grateful for that. So last year when the legislature passed the landmark Act 248, the Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights, Hawaii is only the second state in the United States to have such a piece of legislation. It was indeed a landmark. So this education campaign that we're starting here today is all about peace and justice in the home. Imagine, peace and justice in the home. It's about showing the humanity of a long devalued kind of work. And those two statements alone really, really are what we are all about. I'm so proud that the state of Hawaii played such a big part in leading the nation in extending protections to domestic workers. And you'll hear from other speakers today the specifics of the policies. Who are domestic workers? They are hidden, aren't they? The babysitters, the housekeepers, the caregivers, the landscapers, the cooks, and the others who toil in private homes out of public sight. These workers, as you can imagine, are highly vulnerable. Yet we often hold them responsible for the most important and intimate aspects of our lives, for sustaining our homes, for nurturing our families. These new rights that you're going to hear enumerated today embody the important Hawaiian values of ohana and aloha. They embody the understanding that each individual is worthy of his or her human dignity. So first, I want to briefly introduce and honor all of my hardworking colleagues in the working group who did demonstrate public service at its best, doing the people's business with harmony and efficiency. So I'm going to ask them to stand when I call their names, and don't cheer until the last person stands, okay? So, first, from the State Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, we have the chair, Dwight Takamine, who will be speaking with you soon, and I know that you're very proud of your team. The Office of Community Services, Mila Ka'ahanui, the Executive Director. You can stand, Mila. Everybody stand. Denise Pearson. Lola Salimova. Where's Lola?
Right there.
Oh, Lola Salimova. Alan Burdick. From the Wage and Standards Division, our hyper-efficient Pamela Martin, who has a brilliant mind and a big heart. From the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission, Bill Hoshijo, the Executive Director, so handsome in his suit today. From the Hawaii Immigrant Justice Center at Legal Aid, Colleen Chang, and I believe we have Margarita Cholmay and Jennifer Zhang with us. Please stand. Thank you. From the State Commission on Status of Women, I wasn't sure if she would make it. She's a new mom. The Executive Director, Kathy Betts. And do we have Kara Jabola here today? No, Kara. And we have Joy Lacanienta. And from Faith Action for Community Equity, FACE, Veronica Geronimo. I love your name. I want your name, Veronica Geronimo. So thanks to all of you for your expertise and your commitment. So bravo, bravo. And we're also very indebted to our Ohana and friends from the Domestic Violence Action Center, Lydia Pavon and Vilma Bondak. Thank you so much. And to Nancy Creedman, who is the director. So they have accompanied our very special guest here today. Farah Marie Torres is going to talk to you about her own experiences in being a domestic worker. And Farah will be here afterward for anyone who would like to speak to her or talk to her. So Farah, can you come up, please? And no, Farah's next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Please come, please come.
Still in charge of the working group.
And you know, it's quite okay to drink water. Look, I'm going to drink water right now. So Farah, there's water right there. Thank you so much.
I am happy that there is now a law protecting domestic workers. During my time, I did not have the same protection. I used to work with a family as a domestic helper. I live with them doing household chores, as cleaning the house, cleaning the garden, taking care of the elderly, and going to the grocery store with them. And I am the one pushing the cart and had to carry all the grocery items to the car and to bring them inside the house. I woke up as early as 6:30 to cook food for their breakfast.
You're doing fine, dear. You're doing just fine.
It's okay to breathe.
Thank you.
We'll stay right with you.
Clean the house, to do chores, and to do cheeses after they eat. Prepare for lunch and dinner. And even at night, when they ring the buzzer in my room, I need to wake up and get down to the mom's or auntie's room and change the diaper or anything that I need to do for her. I was not paid a minimum wage. I was only paid $100 a week, despite working more than 8 hours a day. Neither was I paid for overtime. I was glad to have been given a a day off once a week. I know I was being exploited, but I did not complain. If this law was then in effect during that time, I would have been treated better knowing I have right as a domestic worker. Thank you.
Good for you, dear.
Thank you.
Good for you. Good for you.
Thank you, Governor.
Aloha, everybody. As you can see, there are times when we observe the legislature in session, when we comment in the abstract about what lawmaking is all about. But in the end, what we are talking about and what we are about is our humanity. There is a simple equation that has to prevail in any legislative context if we're to be worthy of the freedom allowed us under our Constitution. And that is to see that we not only advance the public interest, but that we see to it that the individual in our democracy is respected. And that not only is everyone worthy of their labor, but worthy of being treated as a human being, fully prepared as a society to enforce whatever is necessary to see that that common sense of humanity is supported and that any laws associated with it are enforced. The working group came together after people like Carl Rhodes, in his role as a legislative chair with jurisdiction over this issue, caused the legislature to be aware of first, and then subsequent to that awareness, pass the legislation. Then the work begins. It's one thing to have a law passed and the legislative intent clear. Then you have to launch an educational campaign. Then you have to put together the sinews of a response that will enable that legislative mission, that legislative mandate to be enacted. Today we launched this educational campaign for the new protections for domestic service workers. It may come as a bit of a shock to those of us in Hawaii who know we have a long history from territorial days to statehood and through now a half century later, more than half a century later. Come as a bit of a shock to realize that domestic workers were not covered under New Deal legislation. When we think of the era of FDR and the post-Great Depression era, we think about Fair Labor Standards Act. We think about the idea of the Wagner Act allowing people to organize themselves, to defend their wages and benefits and conditions of work. But even with that commitment in the Franklin Delano Roosevelt era, the New Deal era, and even with the subsequent labor laws and civil rights laws about equality and equity with regard to labor standards, domestic workers were excluded. In some respects, it was worse than that because it wasn't even conscious that they were being excluded. They were never included. Psychologically speaking, it never got to the point of being shoved out or shoved aside. It never occurred to anybody that they should be brought in the first place. They didn't exist. They were invisible. They were invisible. We've had some some legislation addressing another kind of invisibility lately, haven't we, with the Marriage Equity Act? In other words, we had a whole category, a whole segment of our population that for all intents and purposes did not exist for purposes of legal protection. It was a class issue, it was a race issue, it was a gender issue. It was an issue of recognizability. So Act 248, signed last year in July of 2013, provided overtime and minimum wage protection for domestic workers, added domestic work to the definition of employment, to our employment discrimination and wage and hour laws, and prohibited employers from discriminating or sexually harassing a domestic worker in every respect, thanks to the good work on the legislative side of Representative Rhodes and others in the legislature who were supportive. As Nancy indicated, this is only the second state in the union to even pursue this line of legislative inquiry and then bring it to a successful conclusion. That this was long overdue in terms of equity, I think, goes without saying. But then we faced the task of how do we enforce it? We know what the mission is. It was crystal clear in the law, again, thanks to Representative Rhodes and his colleagues. The question then became, how do we do this? And I want, please allow me a point of personal privilege in saying that how proud I am of my wife, Dr. Nancy Ellen Caraway, in being the convener. Because I think, and I trust everyone here agrees, that she has been a principal catalyst in bringing what otherwise would be disparate elements and units, whether institutionally or personally and professionally together, in an atmosphere and in a context that has resulted in what Dwight Takamine and Mila will be speaking about a little bit more substantively in a moment. It's important, therefore, for domestic workers and their employers. We're not setting up villains and victims here as such. Quite the opposite. In many instances, what we're talking about is employers that simply don't know the rules. Don't know that there are rules now. Don't know that this is not an ad hoc operation anymore. That there are standards to be met. And those standards had to be established in the wide context of the individuals and institutions, governmental and otherwise, that Nancy listed and all of whom became, and all of which became, part of the working group. So it's very important to domestic workers and the employers to know what workers' rights and obligations are, and that's why this campaign is being launched today. So I'm very, very happy to hand off the rest of the program today in terms of the explanation of the brochures and the procedures that we're going to take. First, to Director of Labor and Industrial Relations, Dwight Takamine. Director Takamine, who's, as you may not know, and I want to say for the record, is the son of my mentor in the Hawaii State Legislature. And when I first came in 1974, Yoshiro Takamine of the Big Island, his record, the standards he set as a great champion of labor will resonate in the history of Hawaii, not only in its labor history, but in its legislative history. And his son, Dwight, is working in the wake of that legacy and establishing his own in the process, to be followed then by the Office of Community Services of Executive Director Mila Kahanui, who not only is a great champion of human rights, but if I had to pick a most valuable player in human terms, Mila'd be the top of my list. Dwight?
Thank you, Governor Abercrombie, for your leadership in calling attention to the public education campaign we are launching today. And thank you to First Lady, Dr. Nancy Caraway, for bringing together the state government agencies, community advocates, and service providers who have been instrumental in the planning and implementation of this effort. As indicated in 2013, the legislature passed Senate Bill 535, our Domestic Worker Bill of Rights, which with the governor's signature, then became Act 248. Hawaii became, as indicated by our two earlier speakers, only the second state in our country to have this kind of legislation which expanded the rights of domestic workers. Act 248 affects the laws enforced by the Department of Labor and its attached agencies, of course our Wage Standards Division and our Hawaii Civil Rights Commission. And it does so by enacting protections against discrimination and the right to payment of minimum wage and overtime to domestic workers. Protections and rights that all other workers currently enjoy. That really is the most important message that the legislature, the governor, the department, and all of us are sharing today, that our state laws protect the rights of all workers in Hawaii. Workers who work in other people's homes, caring for children, housekeeping, cleaning, cooking, landscaping, doing laundry, and any other domestic service. These workers deserve to be treated with the same dignity as any other worker in our state. And now our laws include rather than exclude them. Enactment and implementation of Act 248 and this public education effort reflect Hawaii's leadership role in protecting the rights of workers, consistent with a proud history of commitment and progress in this area of civil rights. And Governor, I know you've repeatedly provided, that theme as guidance to the entire cabinet. But we realize that legal protections lose their meaning if workers and employers don't know their rights and responsibilities. This is the reason we need to reach out through the public education campaign to let people know domestic workers have rights. Our Office of Community Services has stepped up to play a key role in the outreach effort through its immigration resource centers statewide, recognizing that many affected domestic workers may be immigrants or newcomers to the state who may need assistance to access information and services and to be able to assert their rights. The Department of Labor is proud to acknowledge the governor, the First Lady, the partnership team, and the legislature in making today's public education effort possible. Thank you very much, and with that, I'll turn the podium over to Mila.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of everyone at the Office of Community Services, our community partners, the immigrant resource centers who are actually doing most of the heavy lifting. It was very clear from the first time the governor and Dr. Caraway convened our working team that the key challenge for us was to work together in a highly collaborative fashion to spread the word about Act 248, to reach out to the hard-to-reach population of domestic workers who live in the shadows and in fear, or as the governor said in that first meeting, the invisible people. It became very clear early on that we had to find culturally and linguistically appropriate ways of communicating to domestic workers who are mostly foreign-born, that they have certain rights, that they have a right to be paid at least the state minimum wage, overtime, be paid overtime after 40 hours of work in a calendar week, that they cannot be verbally or sexually harassed or assaulted, that they are protected regardless of their immigration status, that they have a place to go for help. You cannot imagine how huge this is for people who live in the shadows. You cannot imagine how liberating this is for people who live in fear of strangers, of government, or anyone representing the establishment. Knowing that they don't have to fear government. Knowing that there are services they can go to for help truly frees them from what we call modern-day bondage and servitude. I would like to thank the governor and Dr. Caraway for the inspirational leadership in making this happen. Thank you very much.
You know, I wonder, Carl, if you wouldn't want to come up and just say a word or two on the passage of the bill and how this transpired.
Thanks, Governor. Appreciate it. Well, the passage actually was fairly straightforward as passages of bills go. I'm glad to have played a role as chair of the Judiciary Committee, and we moved it out of our committee quite easily. There were some compromises made that I would have preferred not to have made, that would have made it a little stronger in terms of the hiring and firing, the protections for hiring and firing. But, you know, as politicians have been saying for millennia, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And we didn't, and we passed a very solid bill that I'm very pleased that the governor signed, and is the law of the state at this point, and it is, as everyone has said, cutting-edge legislation. We're only the second state to do it. I would just add a personal note, and that is I represent District 29, which is Kalihi, Palama, Evelyn, and Chinatown, and I just saw the Census Bureau numbers on my district recently. Half my district was born outside of the United States, not just outside of Hawaii, outside the United States. And 62% of them don't speak English at home, when they're conversing amongst themselves. So unfortunately, groups, people who don't speak English as well, who don't know how the game is played, do get taken advantage of on a higher rate. Most of the time, everything goes fine, but every once in a while, you'll get somebody who will try to take advantage. And unfortunately, this group of people who don't know how the game is played in the United States have a difficult time with that sometimes. So, both from a personal perspective, just in terms of this being the right thing to do, I'm very pleased that this passed, but also from a district perspective, where I do represent a lot of immigrants, I think this will have especially once the campaign to publicize it has gotten underway, it will have a profound influence on the lives of many people who are struggling and don't realize that that things don't need to be this way. So thank you, Governor, for the opportunity to speak, and appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Mila wants to explain some of the visual aspects.
Right.
Oops, excuse me. So
I was getting ready to hold stuff up.
Yes.
I'm going to do my duty here.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to mention at this time that we do have our outreach programs starting as of today to get the word out by radio. We've already made arrangements with different ethnic radio stations. And we also have the bus ads already up. They're all up now in 530 buses, right? Yes, they're all up. Thanks to the efforts of the working team. We got it all.
And the governor's communications staff has already been out this morning on the bus with video to provide to the press.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
And the brochure.
this is the brochure, so everybody can see visually what this same brochure does here, our little card. And we'll pass these cards out. On the back are phone numbers from everything from the Office of Community Services Immigrant Resource Centers to the Family Center, Child and Family Services, Catholic Charities on the Big Island, you name it. Each
Yes.
island, each area has some reference point both in terms of a location and a phone number that can be called for help and services. And this,
Translation services and hotlines.
right. So it's very comprehensive. The Office of Community Services is literally a one-stop operation in terms of providing help and assistance to all of those who are recent immigrants, all of those who may have language challenges, all those who may find themselves in difficulties because of cultural, regional, national, or ethnic considerations that do not facilitate easy access to either government services or any other services.
And how many languages is the collateral translated in?
Basically, we have them in 3 languages right now. Okay, yes, we have them in Chuukese, Tagalog, and, actually, about 3 plus, actually more than 10, right? Okay.
10 languages, the materials.
And the service centers will be able to refer people to someone who can take care of any language challenges that are there. There's at least 10 languages that were, which tells you a lot about Hawaii, which tells you a lot about our situation. You know, that's why, I guess we always find kind of remarkable in Hawaii that there's arguments elsewhere, particularly on the mainland, about immigration. After all, everybody immigrated to Hawaii. Some started several thousand or a couple of thousand years ago, and some may be landing at the airport right now while we're having this news availability. So we think that this domestic workers bill and now the law gives us entree then to make certain that for those who have come to make their lives and fortunes in Hawaii, that they have the best possible opportunity to do that, to advance their abilities and their capacities, their capabilities to the full extent of what they possess. Now, I'm about to be
I wanted
over
to
again.
again acknowledge and thank the legislature. Representative Nakashima's committee in the House, our great champion, Roy Takumi, and also, obviously, Carl, and Senator He in Judiciary in the Senate. A huge mahalo to you because they made our being here today possible. So thank you again.
Are there any? We'll take pictures. By the way, we'll take this podium down and we'll get the poster up and some of the other things, and we'll take pictures either singly or in groups. Happy to do that to immortalize today. But are there any questions or commentary that?